taking on UConn in the Final Four, and we're discussing the matchup and what it would mean for the Pac 12 to see Stanford win back to back championships. We're also breaking down Drake London in today's episode of Locked On Pac-12 podcast.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Pac-12 podcast. Thank you so much for making this your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm your host, Cindy Robinson, former Pac-12 student athlete, and joining me today is Spencer McLaughlin from Locked On Ducks. He rocking the Oregon Ducks gear today. Letting you know who he reps very loud and clear. Unfortunately for Spencer, we're not talking anything about Oregon Ducks today. It's literally focused on Stanford and a USC former athlete. So kicking things off with Stanford. Stanford's taking on UConn in the women's Final Four. I'm actually in Minneapolis for the Final Four, covering it for my other job, but definitely looking out for things happening so I can relay them back to you all here on Locked On Pac-12 podcast. Spencer, today I really want to discuss Stanford and this matchup against UConn. Off the bat, like just the most glaring difference between the two teams, Stanford size versus UConn size. It's almost like literally unmatched with any of the teams here. I went to media day yesterday, and I'll just tell you, them girls are tall. I consider myself pretty tall. Them women are tall. But that's not to slight UConn and say that they don't have the skill, but that is one thing that right off the bat you can tell. The size up of them, they don't match up. So for you, obviously that's a big step up for Stanford and obvious advantage from jump. But how do you think that's going to help them in this game against UConn?
Yeah, well, first thing, despite what a lot of people probably think out there, I don't mind rooting for Stanford. My grandparents actually went to Stanford. I didn't apply to the school because I had reasonable college expectations, but definitely good to see the Cardinal back in the Final Four. Coach Vanderveer's done just such a great job with that program in the last few years. But when you have a size mismatch like this one between UConn and Stanford, and it's noticeable, as you can see up there, the biggest thing that you have to do if you are UConn, you have to shoot the ball well, because the number of second chances that you're going to create is going to be, in all likelihood, minimal. I mean, Haley Jones is a good rebounder. Cam Brink is probably the best rebounder that Stanford has. I think that when you look at their team, they're probably going to have an advantage on the glass, and winning a game when you get out rebounded is really, really tough because of second chance points, but also because of just the ability that it can allow for the other team to control the game. I would really like UConn's chances in this game if they somehow get in the positive, or at least draw very close to even in the rebounding department, because it could really be a big discrepancy. And if you're not hitting your shots and you're going one and done every time down the floor, and Stanford's able to get offensive rebounds the way that they're capable of, I just don't know if UConn's going to have the firepower to get there. And, I think 5 years ago, you look at this matchup between these two schools and you would say, oh, UConn, Stanford. UConn is, UConn women's basketball, one of the best dynasties in any sport in the last 20, 30 years or so. And you'd say it's a no-brainer. And I think Stanford, I haven't checked the line recently, but I believe the Cardinal are favored in this game. I think they should be, because this is a UConn team that just squeaked by NC State. And I thought they would. I picked them in my bracket, but I think that, getting Paige Beckers back helps. But when you look at the UConn teams that have won national championships, and somehow Gino Auriemma hasn't done that despite making every Final Four. He hasn't won it all since 2015. I think this is a talented team with a great player, but I don't think it's the most talented team that he's had. You think back to the Maya Moores, the Breanna Stewarts, those sorts of teams when UConn was just far and above everybody else. It's not like that. And I think Stanford has the better roster here. And so going into this game, I expect the Cardinal to win. I thought they would win this matchup when I filled out my bracket weeks ago. And going into this game, Paige Beckers is amazing, but UConn will have to play pretty close to perfect, I think, to hang around, or Stanford could get them by, I think, a comfortable margin.
Yeah, I think when I think of Stanford too, they have so many weapons there. While you have, Cameron Brink and Fran Belibi, you also have Lexi Hull and Haley Jones leading the way. And Lexi has had a huge improvement over the last, I guess, 7 games. I'll say her last 7 games, she's averaged 19.6 points per game. That's a big jump from her first 3 games in the last 3 tournaments. And you've just seen the improvement, and she's taken that leadership role with the team. Also seeing Lacey Hole step up and be more, of a contributor to the team. But on the other hand, you do have Paige Beckers and Kristen Williams, both averaging 14.7 points per game. They're leading their teams, with that consistency. And then you also have AZ Fudd coming in and being a big contributor. So I do think, as I agree that Stanford's going to take it, I do think this game might be closer than what some might expect. Some might already expect that, but I do think initially the idea is Stanford's going to take it away after a while because they just have more at their advantage. But I don't think that UConn's going to make it easy for them. This is actually the 5th time UConn will face national defending champions in the NCAA tournament, but only the 2nd time in the Final Four. But they're just used to this, right? They're used to coming up against competitors and not necessarily folding over. Not going to say it's going to be a guaranteed win for either one, but it's going to be for sure an interesting matchup.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if this is considered a hot take, but when all the great players that are going to be in this game between UConn and Stanford, if they're all playing at their best, I think Paige Beckers is the best among them. I think a lot of people would probably lean towards Haley Jones. Some people might be in the Beckers camp. But I think when you look at what Beckers was able to do in that regional final game against NC State, she was just carrying her team. I mean, she was so good, especially down the stretch, 4th quarter and both overtime periods. She was hitting big shots. She was clutch at the free throw line. She was just the undisputed leader of the team. And not to say that Haley Jones isn't a supremely talented player, but you see stretches where Lexi Hull is the number one or Cam Brink is dominant inside. I think that's, why Stanford's got a little bit more depth. And so if Beckers and Jones, if you compare those two as kind of the premier ball handlers in this game, which I think they are, if you were to say, only one is going to be on, it would have to be UConn's Paige Beckers in order to keep it competitive, because if she's off, I don't think that the depth of this particular UConn team can match Stanford's.
I agree. All right, coming up next, Spencer and I will discuss what it will mean for the Pac-12 to see Stanford win another championship. Super exciting times. Now look, you guys, our next partner has a product I use literally every day. I started taking Athletic Greens because it gives you more energy and it's a way to boost your immune system. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things we care about. Why I personally use it, definitely to boost my energy, but also to take care of my immune system before it becomes a major problem, right? This product is lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free. It costs you less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than, say, the cold brew habit, right? Athletic Greens was created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues and ended up on a complicated supplement routine to recover. It cost him $100 a day. He created Athletic Greens after experiencing how difficult it was to create an optimal nutrition routine on your own. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/college. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/college to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. StatHero's NCAA single game pick'ems picks the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. Take control back from those handicappers that always seem to have the advantage. Start focusing on the players you know best with a gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. StatHero gives you the advantage, resulting in their gamers winning 4 times more often. Why? Because StatHero eliminates the mystery about who or what you're going up against. In addition to their pick'em games, they also have dozens of lineups you can comb through to take on head-to-head. They simply post sets of players for you to take on with a set of players you choose. StatHero is the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fix. This is what daily fantasy was meant to be. Sign up for free right now at stathero.com/lockedon and use the promo code for a 100% deposit match. That's stathero.com/lockedon using promo code LOCKEDON for a 100% match. stathero.com/lockedon, promo code LOCKEDON. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks for making Locked On Pac-12 podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Okay, so Spencer, Stanford won the national championship last season against another Pac-12 team, Arizona. This year, we're not so lucky to have 2 Pac-12 teams in the Final Four or even in the championship game. But, it's still nice to see Stanford back there. For you, I want to know, and this specifically coming from someone that, pays a close attention to Oregon, which has created crazy dynasties and, back-to-back eras. What will it mean for Stanford's women's basketball and the Pac-12 women's basketball, we'll say, to see them win back-to-back championships?
Well, I think even just getting to back-to-back national championship games would be a testament to where the program is at and where the conference is at writ large. I mean, as you know, I cover the Oregon Ducks, and when you look at Kelly Graves' team having a down season in which they get to the NCAA tournament, they're a 5 seed, they're upset in the first round. That's a down year for the Ducks under Coach Graves. And so that's a program that is capable of being a top 15 caliber team in the country. They weren't this year. They showed glimpses of it, but never were able to really stabilize. Same sort of thing on the men's side with Dana Altman. But if Kelly Graves gets them back to where they're capable of being as a program, and you've got Arizona up there, and if you've got Stanford up there, UCLA is a pretty good team as well. It would just go a long ways in fortifying kind of the status of Pac-12 women's basketball as one of the best conferences in the country. And there's not a lot of conferences in any sport really where right now the Pac-12 can say they're among the best in the country. Women's basketball is probably among them. You could also look at softball as well, where they're really, really strong. But I think when you look at the sports like football and men's basketball right now, and men's basketball sent 3 teams to the tournament, and UCLA, of course, got to the Sweet 16. But then lost to North Carolina, and Arizona got to the Sweet 16. USC was bounced in the first round. It's in decent shape over there. But if Stanford is able to repeat this year as champs, there's something to be said about the branding power and attention garnered for the phrase back-to-back national champions. Because when you put that phrase out into the ether and it's a reality for a team in any given conference, you start to get immediate comparisons to, just in the minds of fans, players, coaches alike. You start to think about, is this the new UConn, right? Like I guarantee you, if Stanford wins, that question will be posed on an ESPN panel somewhere, sometime, or CBS, wherever. Like someone will ask, like, is this the beginning of the next UConn dynasty? And that's a tremendous branding opportunity for the Pac-12 to really put their foothold down and say that they're capable of competing on a national level and winning national championships year in and year out. And so I think that's what's on the line here for Stanford, is the ability to do that. And if they just got there, that would be a great accomplishment as well. And back-to-back Final Fours is a great place to be. But I think the standards for success on the women's side are a little bit higher because the depth of competition is not quite as deep as you see on the men's side. We saw a little bit more of that this year, right? Creighton got all the way to the Elite Eight. That's been a little bit more of an anomaly. So I think as the competition starts to balance out on the women's side, you have to just be winning at a higher level in order to gain that sort of respect. But Stanford has put themselves in a position to do that. And if they win the national championship game again this year, boy, that's going to be quite a powerhouse sort of team. And they've got the players who can do it because they've got talented newcomers in the Whole Twins, and then they have players from last year's team, Haley Jones, Cam Brink, who have already won a national championship. So it wouldn't at all be surprising, and it would be a really big thing for the conference to be able to say we've got a back-to-back national champion.
Yeah, it's something to say too, because like you said, a lot of times people look at the brackets and see when it comes to the women's side, the number one seeds have it easy going all the way towards the Final Four, right? But I was actually talking with one of the Louisville players, and she was saying how shocked she actually is that there's 3 number ones in the Final Four, because typically there's a team that always messes it up, right? Or always thinks that they're going to have an easy way through, and then someone surprises them. And that's what we love about March Madness, clearly. But in this situation, we did see them, I won't say have an easier road, but it wasn't as tough as what this Final Four is looking to be, right? This competition now is going to cause, I would say, both teams to play at their top if they want to push forward. And so seeing that they've been able to, yes, go ahead and beat through the, maybe easier teams in the first few rounds, but also get through 2 tough competitive teams out of the Final Four to take home a championship would speak volumes for this team for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think just going back to the matchup here for a quick moment, when you look at UConn, I mentioned earlier that they are not the most talented Huskies team that Gino Auriemma has had in his tenure. And one of the reasons that I feel confident in Stanford going into this game is not just their depth, but also just kind of the feel of how they've gotten here. That crazy game against NC State, which is one of the best games of the year on either the men's or the women's side, which is probably the best game on the women's side so far. UConn and NC State, double overtime. You had a shot at the end of, I think it was regulation or OT to send it to an extra period, a 3-pointer by the Wolfpack. It was absolutely wild. And the problem with playing and winning a game like that, obviously you stay alive and you still have a chance to extend your season, win a national championship, but it's draining. It's physically draining, but I think more importantly for UConn, it's emotionally draining. They've the players on the team and Coach Auriemma has talked about the obstacles they've faced this year. How much more do they have in the tank? Are they going to be at the same level of intensity and mental preparedness that Stanford has coming into this Final Four matchup? And that's a very real thing you have to consider. And I think it's asking a lot of UConn to have that game play out the way that it did, come back and beat the defending national champions who look every bit the part, capable of repeating.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going with the idea that it's just going to be a good matchup. I'm going to enjoy every bit of it. Good basketball. You can never be fully upset with good basketball. I will say, obviously, I'm rooting for, maybe it's not obvious, but I'm obviously, in my opinion, rooting for Stanford because Pac-12 team backing the West. It's so funny because I feel like I'm always working with people who went to East Coast schools or, SEC South schools and stuff like that. And so to see I'm one of the few people I work with actually rooting for Stanford, I got to hold my ground, So I'm hoping that they're able to pull it off. But more than anything, I'm excited to see good basketball from the women's side. It's going to be on ESPN. Everyone should check it out. Make sure they tune in and support women's basketball because despite what people think, these women are extremely talented. They're skilled. You may see a dunk or two. Fran Beliebe actually dunks, okay? If you don't believe me, go ahead and check the highlights. It's out there. So Don't think that you're not going to get some, exciting plays. You just never know. She doesn't.
I'm gonna go one step further here. I think Stanford wins by double digits.
Ooh.
Here's my hot take. I'll take Stanford by double digits. Just
okay.
as I talked all this out, I just talked myself into that. So we're gonna roll with it. But it won't be like a 20-point blowout, but I bet you Stanford wins by 10 to 15 points. We'll call it 13 for a good measure.
All right, hot
Stanford by a baker's dozen.
We will have to talk about we'll have to talk about this next week and see if you were correct. I'm here for it though. I love the energy. I'm all here for it. All right, coming up next, Spencer and I are going to break down Drake London's NFL draft stock, former USC wide receiver player. So looking forward to that as we continue on this NFL draft series. This is the time of year that most people have pretty much given up on their New Year's resolutions, but not me. And I'm sticking to it by using Built Bar as my choice of snack. Okay. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution because of it. I'm a big snack person and I care about having a little sweetness every now and then. I don't have a huge sweet tooth, but every now and then I do like one. So Built Bars are perfect for me. They're 100% real chocolate and they're the perfect protein bar to replace with a candy bar. So if you haven't tried them, you're missing out. They have these things called the puffs, and if you haven't tried those, then you're really missing out. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, they're not just a protein bar, they're a full treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All Built Bars have real chocolate, but also are low in calorie and high in protein. So replace the candy bars with these and you will never want to look back. Okay. They also have multiple different flavors from mint brownie, coconut almond, and the new one for this month is white chocolate cookies and cream. I'm telling you, you do not want to miss out. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make it taste delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. And I don't know how, but they're pulling it off every time. So go to build.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 50% off your order. Okay, Spencer. Drake London, USC wide receiver. There's a few things I feel like we need to discuss about him. One being that he had a phenomenal last season, even though he wasn't able to finish out the season due to injury. He has a basketball background. He has a larger build. These are all things that, in my opinion, make him a great wide receiver, especially in the NFL. Corners are starting to become bigger because wide receivers are more bigger, right? And they're more agile and more athletic. And I feel like Drake London fits that mold for any team looking for a great receiver for their roster. The negatives that I've seen about him are very far and few between. Like the smallest things that I feel like anybody could work through. Large size limits his lateral quickness and his blocking technique can be inconsistent. I feel like I see a lot of wide receivers with inconsistent blocking techniques in the NFL. So it's not one of those things that like can be taught, it's one of those things that are just like, we have to mark it down. We have to show you something that, he can be worked with.
He's not perfect.
Right. He's not perfect. But overall, like, I think a great option for any NFL team, 2021 first team all Pac-12, 2021 AP third team All-American, also played basketball at USC, youngest wide receiver in the 2022 draft class, which is another plus because we know the whole age thing in the NFL is a big deal. The older you get, the less useful they see you. So for you, what are some pluses that you see about Drake London contributing to an NFL team?
He's a fascinating wide receiver prospect for a couple of reasons. Number one, the productivity is undeniable. He was the best offensive player for USC over the last couple of years. Every time he stepped off the field, the offense suffered. He was a security blanket. He was a big playmaker. He's got great hands. He's got a big build. But the thing that I find most intriguing about him is when you watch him play wide receiver, he's sort of underwhelming. But then you look up and he's got 8 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's not going to wow you with his physical gifts outside of his size. He's not going to have incredible speed, or he's not going to have this lightning fast quickness or anything of the sorts. He's fast enough, he's big enough, he's quick enough to play in the NFL. There's no doubt about that. And the biggest point that proves that is that coming off of an injury, he's still projected to go perhaps in the top 5 and be the first receiver off the board. Now, his injury was not as severe as, say, a Jamison Williams or a John Mechie out of Alabama, but the fact that he had any sort of injury and is still projected to go high in the first round is a testament, I think, both to his character and to his physical characteristics and football IQ. But he's just one of those guys who you don't really get wowed. You don't have these, big time kind of Randy Moss highlight. Like if you watch his highlight tape, it's just him being a smart football player with good hands, who knows how to use his body, who's physical after the catch, and who is a good route runner. And those sorts of things are not as flashy as running, a 4-3-2 like Chris Olave, who can also be a very good receiver in the NFL. And I think he will be. But it's just one of those situations where he's just productive, and you just have to understand and accept that, because if you watch him play, you'd think, oh, he's just kind of a wide receiver. But then you see him catch the ball and he runs through tacklers, and you think, boy, that guy, he's the one running through all the time. I know he's big, but he doesn't look like, he doesn't have this big defining trait, or like he's just a big bodied guy. But it's his football smarts, his ability to recognize coverage and sit down in the right spots against his own defense. He's got good hands. He uses his size well. He can catch 50-50 balls in the red zone because he's such a big body. Basketball background, you hear that all the time in the NFL from former wide receiver, or from wide receivers and tight ends who are former basketball players. You throw it up top and you let them go feel how to box out the corner almost as you do going for a rebound. So he's prolific at that, and his just overall production is undeniable. And I think that there'll just be people who, because his highlight reel is just like, oh, he looks like he's a good player, but he doesn't really have blazing speed, they might think, oh, well, maybe he's a 2 or 3. No, this is a number 1 wide receiver who your quarterback is going to be able to rely on. He's capable in the scramble drill as well. When your quarterback gets into trouble and has to break the pocket, he's got a great feel for that and finding the spots. And once he gets the ball in space, he is a tough guy to bring down. He doesn't want to run around you. He wants to run through you. And he's big enough, strong enough, and physical enough to do just that.
All right. I feel like that needs no more extra, added on there. That was like great, perfect. Leave it at that. I'm enjoying doing these though, breaking down the Pac-12 players that we have.
Plenty more.
Yeah, plenty more to go. Spencer and I will continue analyzing, giving you the details about these players, especially as we hear more news about what's happening in their offseason training and et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully everyone's staying healthy and getting ready for that big moment. Make sure you guys continue to check out Locked On Ducks and Locked On Pac-12 podcast on YouTube, on anywhere you get your podcast. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate the support. It's free on every platform. You don't want to miss out at all. Also, while we're talking about NFL draft and, analyzing players, all that stuff, go ahead and make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Spencer, it's been a great week being back and chatting with you.
Yes, indeed.
First week down. You guys, I hope you've been enjoying this week's content. We'll have a lot to talk about next week, including more NFL draft stuff. We'll have hopefully some NCAA championship stuff to discuss. Fingers crossed. Make sure you guys are checking that out on ESPN. Yes, that was a shameless plug for my other employer, but it is what it is. And then you guys just continue to stay locked on Pac-12 on the Locked On Network. Go ahead, Spencer. I was going to say, go ahead and hit it. I'll wait this time. All right.